Hey everybody, it's Tony from Adafruit, and I wanted to do a stream looking at home automation with the Raspberry Pi. So on these Monday streams, I like to just look at some interesting software, just maybe highlight something that looks kind of cool that's worth checking out. And there's a neat piece of software I've seen mentioned a lot on like Reddit, our Raspberry Pi, and lots of other Raspberry Pi places. It's called Home Assistant, and it's an open source kind of DIY home automation hub. So it's just software you can run on your Raspberry Pi, and it looks like it supports talking to lots of interesting home automation devices. So like commercial things like the Philips Hue light bulbs or Wemo switches or Wink kind of smart devices, all those different little crazy gadgets you can get. It looks like you can talk to those things, set up Home Assistant to look at them, but also lots of other things that you might just do yourself. So like it can talk to an Arduino and control the pins and things on it, or even on a Raspberry Pi it can control the GPIO pins on that. So I wanted to just kind of install it, play with it a little bit, kind of see what it's all about, see why it might be interesting, and I figured I'd stream a little bit about that here too. So let's just kind of dive in, and let's see, we'll switch to the main view here. So a lot of stuff going on here. So in the upper right up here, basically this is the workbench, and I've got a few things kind of set up here. So I have a big light right here, well not really big, but it's a little desk lamp, and inside of this desk lamp is this crazy thing. So this is a Lifx Wi-Fi light bulb, which they're kind of neat. I've been testing them out a little bit. It's a smart light bulb, so it's like the Philips Hue, the really popular ones. But this one uses Wi-Fi, which is kind of cool and kind of interesting, so that it connects to your router, and then anything on your Wi-Fi network can talk to it and control it. So like, there's a little Lifx app, but there's also like software presumably you could write yourself, or I'm sure there are libraries and things. And then Home Assistant, the software here, can actually talk to these lights. So they're pretty neat. And by the way, too, I'll put links in the description below to all the different like products and software and things I mentioned. And by the way, all these products are just things I bought myself. No one's Wemo and Lifx, none of them have contacted me. I'm actually checking them out, and I'm going to hold judgment on them yet, because some of these Wi-Fi devices are a little tricky to set up. So just be warned that it's not a perfect everything automatically works kind of world yet for these. But anyway, so that's what's on this light right here. I've got this Lifx light bulb, so it's kind of neat. You can control the colors and all that, and we'll play with that. Now you can't see it, but hooked up to it, it's actually plugged into a Wemo Insight switch, which is like a little Wi-Fi switch, like it's basically a relay, so it can turn on and off a little AC power cord. So you can plug like a light bulb like this guy into it. You can plug an appliance into it. And the neat thing about this switch is that you can turn it on and off, but you can also read the energy usage from it. So it'll give you like, here's the current milliamp hours of power being drawn by this device. So that's kind of cool to like log that over time and see how things work with it. So that's maybe a typical kind of home automation setup. You've got all these little smart gadgets and you're controlling stuff. And then over here I've got a few things. So this is a Raspberry Pi. This is the Pi 3 that I have. But this will work on any Pi. It'll also work on any computer. Like it supports, Mac, OS X, Windows, stuff like that, Linux. So, you're good to go with whatever you have. But it's a Raspberry Pi. I've got a little GPIO cobbler cable connected, and there's an LED right here, and it's turned on right now. And this is an LED connected to the Pi, because we'll see how you can control that from the software. And then up here is an Arduino, so an Arduino Uno. And it's running the standard Fermata firmware, which is kind of the remote control protocol for Arduinos. And I'll show you, like you can just load up on any Arduino. It's in the examples that are included with Arduino IDE. You load the standard Fermata example and just burn it to an Arduino board. And then the Arduino is actually connected to the Raspberry Pi just through the USB cable. So the Raspberry Pi just sees a serial connection, and it can talk to the Arduino board right here. And connected to the Arduino, I've got a little red LED right here, and then a potentiometer. And so both those things can actually be controlled by Home Assistant here. So we'll kind of play with that and see what I've set up with it. And then, so the main home page for it's homeassistant.io. As far as I can tell, I think it's just an open source. Well, it is open source. I don't know if there's any like commercial backing behind it, if there's like a company behind it, or if it's just a bunch of volunteers. I think it's just a bunch of volunteers, but they've got a great web page, like real nice and slick, very well put together. They put some effort into this. And so it's basically tells you, how to get started here, explains a little bit about it. They kind of show, here's like a neat little mobile interface, talks about what it supports. Now the installation, so I've got it set up on my Raspberry Pi right here, and I'm SSH'd into it. I actually have two connections open. This is it running right here. It's just showing a bunch of debug output. But the install is pretty much as easy as they show here. Now it's a Python 3 application, so by default on your Raspberry Pi, like load up, the Jessie, Raspbian Jessie operating system, and then you'll need to sudo apt-get install Python 3 and Python 3-pip. So install both those packages. That'll make sure that you get Python 3 installed, and I've already got them installed, so this automatically just says there's nothing left to do. And then it is as simple as pip3 install Home Assistant. Now they don't mention sudo, but you probably do want to do sudo pip3 install Home Assistant. And the reason for that is because if you install it globally on the Raspberry Pi, then you have to run it as root. You could create a little virtual environment, which is sometimes like the recommended way to do Python stuff, but you can just run it as root here, and it's fine. So I've already installed it, so there's nothing left for it to do. And then to run it, it just has this program called has, and I think I can just run help to just get some output from it. Yeah, so this kind of tells you a little bit, like, I can get the version and stuff like that. And that's all that I did. So it's running, and it's ready to go. And so I'll show you the dashboard that I've set up with it. So when it's running on the Raspberry Pi, I'm basically accessing my Raspberry Pi host name, and then port 8123 is kind of the default port here. And so this is kind of cool. This is a little dashboard, and I've done a little bit of configuration, so I'll show you. We'll kind of dive into how you can configure this. Some of the stuff it just discovered automatically, which is pretty cool. And then some of it you kind of have to tell it that, hey, I have an Arduino and stuff like that here. But you can kind of see, so it's got a bunch of switches and things. So like here's the LED on the Arduino, and so if I press this, then you see the red light up here kind of turned on, and if I press it again, then you see it turns off. So that's cool, like basic little digital input output of things. Same thing for the LED on the Raspberry Pi, so that, I can turn that off, turn that on. And then the Wemo Insight. I won't press this just yet. So this is the smart little wall switch that I have, and I can turn that thing on and off. It's also kind of cool. I can click this, and it shows. I think it's kind of showing like the history of when it was on and when it was off. So it's doing like a little graph right here. And I don't think this UI is maybe super well optimized for the main kind of browser that I'm looking at with. So it's a little scrunched up. But the cool thing, at least it shows, here's the current power draw in milliwatt hours. So this is, 10 watts or so roughly, which sounds about right for an LED light, about 10 watts. So that's kind of cool, like these switches. And the really neat thing with the Wemo switch here is that it actually automatically discovered that switch. Like as soon as I ran Home Assistant, it has a little discovery app that runs that looks for certain devices that it can discover on your network, and it found that one automatically. So that's cool. I didn't even have to do any configuration for that. Now these two guys down here, these are actually Chromecast Audios that I have. So I have one in the bedroom, one in the office actually right behind me. And it's kind of neat. So it actually automatically discovered these. Now I'm not exactly sure how to use these in their interface yet. It's got a power switch, and I think after I press that, it says it turned it on, and then it's it says it's idle. I don't know how to load music into this thing yet though. So like this is kind of showing, okay, here's the audio level for it. There's a play button, but I don't know what that's actually doing. So probably have to play around more and kind of figure out, what how to load up. Like they might not have a UI for this. And I should kind of say, like, I don't know if it's in beta, but this is kind of software that's not fully finished as far as there's I'm sure there's a lot more stuff that they'll implement in the future for this. So it's not like a final thing yet. It's maybe something I'll come back to also and look at later over time. Okay, so those are the Chromecast. That's pretty cool that you can at least see them and control them on this dashboard. And then this light, this is actually the Lifx Light that I was mentioning. And so this is cool. So like you can turn it off and turn it on. So I just turned it off and you can see it kind of darkened over here and then turn it on. You can change the color also. So, you know, this is like a little RGB light. So, you know, make it like purple, green, something like that. So that's pretty cool. You know, you've got like a little web dashboard here. And then the other neat thing too, and I'll show this as best I can, the thing that really impressed me is that this works really well on mobile. So let me pull up on my Android phone my dashboard, and you'll see this is pretty cool. So let's see if I can kind of, if it'll focus in there. So yeah, so you can basically see like this is the dashboard, and it's exactly like you see on the web page. And then let me see if I can press one of the buttons here. Let's say like the LED on the Arduino. Oops, so I just pressed that, and you can see the red LED on the Arduino turned on. And if I turn that off, we should see that, yeah, the LED goes off. So pretty cool. I mean, you've got basically your whole interface here for the dashboard, and it's, you know, just like it looks on the website here. So that's pretty fancy and pretty cool. I think that you get, you know, this neat little web dashboard. So, you know, you can imagine if you had a lot of these smart devices, you can put them all into a dashboard and control them. Now, the one thing that really impressed me and kind of the reason I wanted to check this out, so on the web page for Home Assistant IO, they list all of the components that it works with. And so it's written in Python, and I'll actually show like you can extend it and write your own code, but there's a ton of stuff. You know, it's open source. People have contributed a lot of cool stuff to this. So I'll just kind of browse through and just hit some of the highlights here of the cool stuff that you can do. So it's got like Echo integration, the Amazon Echo device, and it looks like you can get pretty advanced with this. Like it's, you know, you can have it say like, you know, turn on the living room lights, and it'll do that. Now a lot of that stuff Amazon is starting to implement, you know, itself, especially as more companies integrate and they open up the Echo to work with other services. But it's kind of cool. Like and the reason I wanted to check this out is that it's neat to be able to run a hub software like this yourself, like on your own Raspberry Pi, in your network. You know, you can lock it down to just your network. You don't have to be dependent on some cloud service. Like, you know, there was that service that Google and Nest acquired, Revo I think was the name, and they basically just sent out an email to everyone like, hey, sorry, your little Revo hubs are going to stop working in a few months. So, you know, because if you run the software yourself, that hopefully can never happen to you. So, you know, I like looking at software and stuff that you have a little more control of yourself. You know, there's trade-offs to that, though, and that, you know, maybe the interface isn't going to be as slick and as fancy and as easy to use as, you know, a bigger commercial product. But I think it's cool. I think this software is definitely pretty promising. But other stuff, so Arduino, I'll look at that more in a little bit. But you can do things like, you know, I have my Arduino hooked up to my Raspberry Pi here, and it can read some of the inputs. It can control some of the outputs. You could have like a sensor connected to the Arduino and have it send data. The Wemo devices, like I mentioned, you know, pretty much every smart device that I'm aware of, it looks like they support. And if they don't support it, they've got a lot of generic hooks that you could add support without a ton of work to, you know, some arbitrary device. But yeah, all kinds of stuff. Let's see. These are kind of cool. It has command line action. So like command line switch. This is, you know, if you want to set something up and all you can do, you know, you've got some weird little app that has to run on the Raspberry Pi, you can do that. So you can configure a switch and have it run a command line command on your Raspberry Pi, you know, or maybe like a script that you wrote to go, you know, talk to some service or do some fancy stuff. So that's cool. That gives you a lot of flexibility if you want to get in there and deal with command line stuff. Lots of neat stuff. So like, yeah, you know, Denon network receivers, can pull in RSS feeds, it looks like. Forecast.io, real nice little weather service. So you can pull down like the weather feed of things. IP cameras, it looks like it supports. Notifications, it has all kinds of ways it can talk to different notification services. Like Growl is a little notification client you can run that'll like pop up, you know, notifications like, you know, someone sent you an email or something like that. It can integrate with Pushbullet, which is like more of a mobile notification service. And I think it even has like native push notifications for like Android and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool. It's got, you know, like smart thermostat control. If this then that, which is kind of neat. I'm not sure exactly what it does. I guess you can probably trigger different things that you set up on If This Then That just from your local Home Assistant setup here. So that's kind of cool. Lifx light bulbs, like I mentioned, so that's the bulb I've got. MQTT looks like it's got lots of integration. You know, if you can connect to an MQTT service like Adafruit IO potentially, and maybe send and receive data with that. Music, so MPD, the music player daemon, real popular kind of Linux music player software. You know, build your own kind of Sonos setup if you wanted. But they also, it looks like, I think they support Sonos itself in here. I'm pretty sure I saw that. Yeah, so Sonos. So, you know, you've got that already. You know, it actually, the neat thing too, so this Nmap, it can do presence detection where it can try and detect, you know, is someone home? And there are a lot of ways to do it, but one way is if you have your cell phone on and your cell phone connects to your Wi-Fi network, you can actually set it up to scan your Wi-Fi network and look for your cell phone, like a static IP that's assigned to it, or maybe like, I don't know, host name, maybe even MAC address potentially, I'm guessing. But as soon as it sees that device on your network, then it kind of knows like, okay, you're probably at home, or at least your phone is at home because it's on your network and it sees that device. And then that can do all kinds of stuff. You can set up triggers to say, you know, like when I'm home, you know, make sure the lights are turned on and maybe like unlock the doors or something like that. So neat, lots of really neat little possibilities. And again, I like that it's all kind of do it yourself in the sense that, you know, you're picking what components you want to use, you're kind of plugging them together, and I'll show you the configuration file in a little bit. So, you know, you're not locked into like what one vendor has for presence detection. It's, you know, if someone can do some crazy tool to detect that you're in, you know, your home, then you can put it into this system. So that's pretty cool. Let's see, it looks like it has some Plex integration. Oh, this one was neat, the public transit, the GTFS. So this is, it can actually talk to public transit feeds, and there's this protocol called GTFS, the General Transit Feed Specification. So things like, you know, in the Bay Area, the whole BART system, you can actually get a feed that's like, you know, here's how many minutes until this bus is at this station, and you can configure your dashboard to have that as a sensor to say, okay, you know, when you know, a bus is at a station that I care about, trigger some kind of event, you know, maybe like turn on a light in my house or something like that to say, hey, you know, the bus is here, or maybe when it's like 15 minutes away from getting there, something like that. So that's pretty cool that you can plug into services like that, you know, and do stuff like that. It's got Raspberry Pi integration, and so I'll show a little bit about that. Like that's how it's controlling this little LED up here, and you know, all kinds of other little gadgets and stuff here. Let's see. Oh yeah, the funny thing, they have Twitch integration. I'm actually using this in my dashboard. So it can look at a Twitch channel, and if that channel is on, then that can fire an event. So you could actually make a Twitch on-air sign, you know, just with this Home Assistant, and maybe control, you know, like your smart light bulb over here, have it turn on red or something when your favorite Twitch streamer is streaming. So that's pretty cool. And there's no coding that you have to do to make this work. But I'm not going to say that it's super easy yet. There's configuration you have to do, and has a special format that we'll kind of look at. So it's, you know, it's not as easy as like maybe if this then that, or in some cases, you know, you're just kind of picking, okay, when this happens, do this. It's pretty close to that, but it's not exactly as easy as that yet. But it's you know, you're not like going in and writing a Python service and, you know, making it work. Like you're picking all this pre-made code, which is cool. So okay, yeah, it's talking like Wink, Z-Wave, Zigbee, all kinds of fancy stuff here. So yeah, I mean, you can see like there's at least 100 or so different things that it can integrate with. And again, this is all just Python code that powers it, so it's open source. You know, you can plug in your own components here. But it's pretty neat to see just the breadth of things that they have available. So like I mentioned, so I set it up, and I have my little dashboard kind of running here, and like I was mentioning before, you know, the stuff in here. Now at the top, these are actually the sensors up here from what I can tell. And so I actually have a potentiometer sensor. Next to it, this is the Twitch sensor that's looking at the Adafruit channel. You can see it's active because I'm actually streaming, so that's good. I won't test that right now, but when I wasn't streaming, it actually said offline up here, so that's kind of cool. And I don't know, let's click this and see. So oh, this is kind of neat. It actually shows, you know, it was offline, and then at some point I just went online, and obviously, you know, so it looks, oh, 21 minutes ago it changed, so that looks about right looking at how long I've been streaming. So this is kind of neat, and it actually shows, here's the title of it, you know, here's what we're publishing under Creative. So that's pretty cool that, you know, that's just a little sensor that I've put in, you know, the quote-unquote sensor that's looking at Twitch. It has a sunrise, sunset sensor that's kind of built into it, just based on your location. And the potentiometer. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to change the potentiometer, so I'm going to twist it down to a low value. And it doesn't update instantly, so I think there's like a 10-second refresh interval, and I'm betting there's a way to tweak that in the software to like maybe reduce that if you wanted. But it's not going to like instantly pick up that the potentiometer changed. But after a second here, it should pick this up. So okay, cool. So you see it just went down to 161. It was at 768 or so. And something else happened. You might have noticed the LED on the Pi switched off right here. And that's because I set up a little automation rule. And that's a really cool thing that you can do with the software. So you can do like basic triggers of, when a sensor changes state, do some action on a device. So I have two little automation rules set up right now for this potentiometer. Like when it goes above the level 400, so I'll crank it back up, then turn on the LED that's on the Raspberry Pi, and when it goes below 400, turn off the LED connected to the Pi. But I could change those actions to anything else. Like I could have it change, the color of the Lifx light bulb, or turn it on or off, or something like that. So, pretty cool that it has this capability to do these kind of triggers and things like that. So now just wait a second here, because I changed the potentiometer. I haven't seen it update yet, but like I said, it's either 10 seconds or 30 seconds, or there we go. It looks like it just updated. So 685, that's above 400. So it just turned on the little LED on the Pi right there. So that's pretty cool. And then let's see. Oh, and I'll show you also the Wemo insight switch, like I mentioned before. So I can click that off, and that actually physically just disconnected the power to this little Lifx light bulb. It's like, clicking this guy is actually not doing anything. And oh, it looks like, yeah, it didn't even turn it off because the light itself is turned off. But let's see, we'll turn it back on. And in theory, it'll kind of work. But I've noticed these Wi-Fi switches and light bulbs are a little flaky. Like sometimes they don't instantly show up in the apps, just because Wi-Fi itself is not like probably the best protocol for home automation. There's lots of devices that can crowd your network, and you want to know, okay, this device turned on or this one turned off. But it looks like it works. So yeah, okay, yeah, it looks like it's connected. So turn it off, turn it on. Okay, so that's cool. Now let's dive in and look at the configuration here. So we'll look at the configuration file. After you install Home Assistant, basically it creates a configuration file, and it's on your Raspberry Pi. It's in your home directory in a hidden folder. So the .home assistant folder by default, and then there's this configuration.yaml, which is a little configuration file format. So that's what I have in this text editor here just opened up. And you can see, so there's like some basic configuration you throw in here, and I actually changed this. By default, it did a GeoIP lookup the first time I ran it to see what my latitude and longitude was. I just threw in the general latitude and longitude of Seattle so that people don't track me down here. But you can kind of say, okay, here's a name for this. This is my home. What temperature units I use, my time zone. That's kind of cool. All of these are like the defaults for the different components that it has. So like it has a discovery component, which is how it automatically found the Chromecasts and things that I have. But then down here is where I started to put in my own configuration here. And so I'll talk a little bit about what I added, and you can kind of see how the configuration looks. And like I said, it's not code that you're writing here. Like this is configuration, but the YAML file format is a little structured, so you have to put things in a certain kind of order and a certain casing. It's a little complex, but they actually do have pretty good documentation on the Home Assistant webpage here. So in the getting started, they go through like, here's what your configuration file looks like, and they talk about the format for it. The other thing I should mention too, and I'll put links down in the description, they have a really good little cookbook page here that talks about cool things you can do with it, like set up if it's going to rain, change your lights and stuff like that. So real simple stuff. I also kind of like, they link to example configurations, and it's just neat to see what people have set up. So like this person has, a pretty complete setup. They have, different rooms, and each room they have like all the switches for the lights and things like that. And, they've got the cameras and stuff. So getting an idea of what you could do with this if you really took it far and like, went all out with it, you could have a neat little dashboard here. And again, like you saw, you can use on your mobile phone, on your network. It has a nice little mobile friendly kind of interface. So that's pretty cool. But let's go back to the configuration file. So I set up, like I mentioned, I set up the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi as kind of like custom, I think they call them entities and services on the network. And so this Arduino section basically says, this is my Arduino running the Fermata firmware, and this is the serial port that it's connected to. So by default, the serial port is usually TTY ACM0 on the Raspberry Pi, but it could be other things. Usually, if you run like lsl dev/tty star, this will list all of the serial devices. Now, all of these numbered ones are kind of like the default ones that Linux creates, but the other ones, so TTY AMA0 is usually the physical serial port on the Raspberry Pi, like the TX and RX pins, which usually the kernel uses, and so you don't want to use that one. Then if you have like a USB to serial port, like an Arduino USB to serial converter, sometimes it'll show up as TTY ACM0, sometimes it'll show up as TTY USB. It just kind of depends on what the USB to serial chipset is and how the kernel's configured it. But usually the easiest way to figure it out is unplug the Arduino, run this lsl dev tty star, then plug the Arduino in and run the same command and see what was added, because you'll usually see there's a new thing added here. But that's all you need to specify is the port. And again, like I mentioned before, you need to load the Fermata firmware in Arduino. So I guess I can show that real quickly. Let's see, let me run the Arduino API. So let's go down to the programs, and we'll run Arduino here real quick. And of course the cat, she's coming by, you might hear in the background. I guess she's a fan of home automation. So that would actually be fun to put some sensors in, like, where the cat likes to sleep. I'd love to have some kind of, in home location detection kind of service. I've been thinking, is there a way to do it with like Bluetooth Low Energy beacons or something, so that the cat could wear like a little collar, and then I could know, oh, she's under the bed right now, or she's lounging in the windowsill. But maybe that's for future stuff. So okay, so to load Fermata, it comes with Arduino by default. It's actually in the examples. Look under Fermata, and then you want standard Fermata. This is kind of the default one, and this should work with most Arduinos like Uno, Leonardo, and compatibles. I don't know if this is going to work with like ESP8266, for example. Sometimes there's some more specific stuff that you need to do to port Fermata over, but all you need to do is just load this onto your Arduino, and that's it. And then it'll act like a Fermata device. Now, you won't be able to open the serial monitor in the Arduino IDE and like interact with the device. You have to use a Fermata client to control it, but Home Assistant has that built into it. So that's what I did with my Arduino. And then I defined here, so I defined a switch on the Arduino, and a switch, from what I can tell, is like, something that can be on or off. And you can actually say, you can list each of the pins, like, so pin 2 on my Arduino is connected to the LED, and so I gave it a name, and I told it that it's a digital type. I think that's the only type that it supports. But if I had other digital outputs that I wanted to control, I could put them into this list here. Also, and then I created a sensor here, and that's the potentiometer that's on the Arduino. And so it looks like it only supports the analog inputs on the Arduino right now. So if you have like a thermistor or a light sensor that gives you an analog value, you can send it into an analog input here, and it'll treat it as a sensor for the device. So that's pretty cool and pretty easy to set up. And then the switch, so for the Raspberry Pi, I basically set up the switch. It uses this little RPI GPIO platform configuration, and then you just list each of the pins. So pin 18 is what I have this LED connected to, and give it a name. And then just like the Arduino switch, it seems like it only supports like a digital type of switch, an on or off switch. So it's not like talking to a device or something like that. It's basically turn it on, turn it off. But even just with that, you can connect like solenoids to your Raspberry Pi, relays, all kinds of things to control different devices if you wanted. Now the Twitch sensor, like I mentioned, this is pretty cool. Like just a few little lines of configuration. I've told it to monitor the Adafruit Twitch channel, and so it looks like when it goes online and offline, that triggers different events here that I can pick up. So that's pretty cool. And I mean, you can see, it's not code, but I wouldn't say that this is like super easy for like my parents couldn't go and write this kind of stuff and make it work, but it's not it's not as challenging as like trying to create some Python script and make sure it's always running and deal with all these failure cases and stuff. So it's they give you these basic components, and you can start kind of plugging them in and adding them to your dashboard. Now the automation, like I mentioned before, so when I change that potentiometer, so I'll change it so it's at a lower level. When it goes below 400, it turns off the green LED, and again, it only updates like every 10 or 30 seconds or so. And then when it goes above 400, it'll turn on the LED. And so you can see how it's defined. So it has kind of this convention for setting up automation scripts. So you kind of give it a name with an alias. Then you have a trigger that will trigger this automation. And in their documentation, I'll link more to it. You can go through and see a lot more details of things that can trigger. Basically any sensor that changes state can trigger automation. They even have some built-in stuff, like if the weather changes, you can trigger automation. So lots of different things can trigger this. So I have it set up when the numeric state of my potentiometer, which is what I configured up here with the Arduino, when that changes and when it goes above 400, then it'll do this action right here, where it'll do a switch.turnOn action for the switch.ledpi entity. And this is where it starts to get a little tricky to use it, and where I think probably in the future they might make this a little simpler, I'm sure, because unfortunately there's no little web interface to set up this automation. So you see my dashboard here. You don't have something like an if this then that style where you can see like, okay, when this event happens, trigger this thing. I'm sure that in the future they'll probably look at stuff like that, because it seems like a natural fit for you've got a cool little dashboard. Now it'd be nice to have all those rules and things to edit here. But they do give you some of these developer tools that you can go in and kind of see how it views the world. So this service thing is, I think, any like actions that you can do. So like the switch.turnOn and turn off, these are different actions you can do. And I think, let's try if I do switch turn on, and I think I can set the entity ID in here. Let's see. Can I do entity ID equals, so this should be JSON, it looks like. I don't know. I'm just kind of winging it. Let's see if I can make this work. If I set my entity ID to switch.led Arduino, boy, the cat is really she has something to say about this. Let's see what this does. Okay, unexpected token E. Okay, so I don't know exactly what the syntax is here, but the interesting thing is here, like you can kind of see these are like the raw actions that you can take. So like it can turn on and off lights, toggle different things on here. Now this next page, this looks like it shows all the entities in my dashboard. So you can actually see, like, here's the switch for my LED Pi. Here's the switch that's connected to my Arduino, like the LEDs that are connected there. Here's, that Wemo insight switch, and so it tells you a little bit more about it. So this is where I found like the name of, switch LED Pi in this code right here. Is I use that tab to just see all the entities on my network. So it looks like that's kind of where you can find all those things. And then let's see, this I think actually lets you like manually send an event to say, like, I guess if you want to test things out. So again, these are all like the low-level developer tools that you're probably not going to mess too much with. But that's pretty cool that it at least gives you that capability to go in and start messing with the data that it has and the state that it has for it. So it's pretty neat as far as what they have implemented so far. And then let's see, a couple other things I want to mention. So like I mentioned, it's all written in Python, and it is actually extensible. And so I haven't done anything yet myself, but I was just kind of looking at the documentation here. So it looks like it's as easy as just creating a .py file that has like a setup function. It looks like you probably need to create some certain objects that implement, the service or the thing that you want to expose. But it doesn't look like it's too difficult as far as, there's not like a ton of boilerplate code here. It looks like it's pretty straightforward to do this. So that's pretty cool in that if you really wanted to get advanced and you had, maybe like things connected to your Raspberry Pi, like, interesting sensors and stuff like that, you could probably implement it and hook it into their system without too much trouble on here. So I think that's it. I think that's all I really wanted to do. Like I said, I just wanted to look at some interesting software on the Raspberry Pi, just get an idea of what it can do. I think the coolest thing by far is just how it builds this really nice little web dashboard. You just put in, like you saw in the configuration, all I did was say these are my devices that I have. Oh, and I didn't mention this. The Lifx light bulb, I manually configured it down here. It does have a discovery, but it looks like I had to explicitly tell it the IP address of my Raspberry Pi and the broadcast address before it would actually see my Lifx bulb. So just a hint if you're using those. But it's really cool in that, from that configuration file, it builds this nice little dashboard. It's integrating in different sensors up here so I can see the state of things in my house. And then, just having the nice ability to just go in and say, turn that on, maybe turn this LED on the Pi, turn that one on, maybe turn the light back on, change the color of this thing. And then like I showed, before, you can go in and set up those little automation rules. So it's like your own little if this then that service that you're running yourself on your Raspberry Pi. You're in control of it. It's not going to go away. You're not going to get an email from it, hopefully, that says, by the way, we're shutting this down. So it's yours to make of it as you please. So that's it. So that's homeassistant.io. Like I said, I just wanted to check it out. It looks like really neat open source software here. That's pretty interesting. You can run on your Pi, run on your computer, connect a bunch of devices to it, and look at interesting home dashboards to create with that. So if anyone has questions, maybe throw them into the chat, and we'll jump back to kind of the main view here. But otherwise, yeah. So that's the stream. Thanks for watching. Check out youtube.com/Adafruit. You can see this video and all kinds of other fun videos and projects and things up there. Check out twitch.tv/Adafruit. That's where I stream this live. I do a Monday stream and a Friday stream, and so the Friday streams I usually do like a longer, more in-depth kind of look at interesting stuff. So we're kind of in the middle of a series of Raspberry Pi talking to Wi-Fi things. So little Wi-Fi boards like the ESP8266, looking at how can you just do basic communication between a Wi-Fi Arduino board and a Raspberry Pi. So how do you send data from the Wi-Fi board to the Raspberry Pi, and how do you have the Pi send commands back to the board? So I've done 2 videos already that looked at some real basic, easy ways to do that. And then this week we'll probably start looking at doing more coding with Python, as far as like creating a little simple socket-based server that can read sensor data from a Wi-Fi board and play more with that. So that'll be interesting, so check that out. And then just check out during the whole week, we've got all kinds of other live streams going on. Noah and Pedro have Layer by Layer. Lady Ada has Desk of Lady Ada, so you can see kind of what she's up to. So lots of fun stuff going on in the world of Adafruit. I don't see any questions, so I guess we'll turn off the stream, and that's a quick look at homeassistant.io. And I think I'll probably look at this again in the future. Maybe not in the next week's stream, but come back to it again and see kind of how it's evolved. And looks like a really cool platform, though. If you're into home automation, if you have a lot of smart gadgets, definitely check it out. It looks like a cool thing to see. So thanks a lot. This is Tony from Adafruit, and I'll see you guys on Friday this week. So we'll do the next in the Wi-Fi, the Raspberry Pi talking to Wi-Fi things series. So that's it. See you guys.